Now that I find myself in the above 35 range, and having just read this book, I'm going to share a lot of what James Hollis has to say about middle-aged adulthood. So if you're under 30, it might actually be appropriate for you to change the channel around now, unless you're ahead of your time. Let's see here. James Hollis, my new favorite author, actually, let's not say favorite, but let's say he's an author that I'm exploring outside of my other typical mentor, James Hillman. James Hollis makes 3 claims throughout this book in relation to middle age, which I found compelling enough to share with you today. One of the claims that he makes: we see ourselves through multiple lenses. These lenses often do not reflect our true nature. We have 2 adulthoods, he also claims. Our first adulthood starts at about age 12 and goes until we're about 40 years old. By midlife, which is in fact our second adulthood, our soul can't help but break through the obstacles we've had to becoming our true selves. So the first claim: we see ourselves through multiple lenses. These lenses often do not reflect our true nature. We can't help but see ourselves through our genetics or our gender, a specific culture, and variables of our family environment. And you might say, well, duh. But we must admit that we live less from our true nature than from these lenses that we've been using. Families pass on their vision of life from generation to generation, and out of that very opinionated perspective, or in rebellion of it, choices and consequences are repeated. We see some aspects of the world, but we miss others. And by the time we reached about 35 or 40, and sometimes before that or long after that, the first step to making our lives truly meaningful is to recognize that partiality of the lens or the lenses that we've used. We've been believing for some time that the way we've grown to see the world is the only way to see it, the right way, perhaps, and we haven't always suspected the conditioned nature of our viewpoint. Now, just how much we really wish, and I mean desperately wish, to be good and well-liked or have robust health is in some way in direct proportion to our childlike fear and our lack of education about the ways of the world. The bitterness and depression we often feel between our 30s and through our 60s is sometimes connected to the amount of energy we invest in those fantasies and wishes of childhood and adolescence to be very energetic and successful and even, sexy or sexual. As adults, we are spouses and or parents and job holders. We have projected our identity onto those roles, striving to be responsible and goal-oriented. Now, doing so, we often lose our sense of meaning and passion that we may have had when we were younger and childlike. Now, there's a difference between being childish and childlike, which I'm sure you know. Childish includes temper tantrums if you don't get what you want. Whereas childlike encompasses that sense of life lived freshly and in the moment. Ironically, by trying really hard to keep up a sense of control, we actually lose our sense of power. It becomes overwhelming or underwhelming even to make decisions as adults have to do, because there's often a lack of joy in the choices that we've laid out for ourselves. You might agree with Hollis in the middle passage when he says that one of the very corrosive aspects of midlife is that joylessness that comes with your routine. That playful child that we all carry inside, that comes out sometimes on, Friday night when we're drunk, is not welcome at the office, and perhaps not even in our marriages. We are rewarded for our professional specialization and our skills, not only at work, but in intimate relationships. Our partners depend on us because we have a certain amount of know-how and skill. But where there is play, there is life. Now, we develop many roles which are indeed necessary. We're one way with our parents, and we're another way with our boss, and we're another way with our lover. And the persona is a necessary way for us to communicate with the outer world. There's no denying that. But we tend to confuse the persona of other people with who they actually are, just as we think that we are the roles that we play. Sometimes. In the middle passage, James Hollis explores how when we live in society, we have to constrict our natural impulses. Now, often this is a good thing. We're not going to act in public the way we do at home in our bathrooms or bedrooms or, even our kitchens. But there is a limit to how much a human being can take having to hold in so much at a time, in the name of proper behavior. Hollis points out that the word ang, which makes up the word anxiety, angst, and angina, this root word means to constrict. When we're forced the majority of the time to be professional and put together, where do all our natural impulses, all this natural energy, where does it end up going? Hollis suggests that it either fuels our selfish ambitions or eventually drives us to drugs and alcohol with the intention of dulling that energy down. In this case of the former, being ambitious, Hollis believes that the more trained we are, or the more trained people want us to become, the more narrow we might actually become as personalities. He says that the further we go professionally, the more we do indeed risk damage to the personality. We are often overly secure in our achievements, for example, but only a small part of our potential has been tapped there. From elementary school onwards, we're grouped according to functions and abilities and grades, and we're led into increased specialization. She's good at sports or writing, he's good with his hands, but oh my God, he's got 2 left feet. So you're put into categories and you end up investing a lot of your time in something, feeling pretty good about that talent, and you're often not doing something else that might have some meaning for you. To be honest with you, I've learned recently that I'm not helpless at cleaning a house or being in a kitchen once in a while, and it's certainly not below me, as I felt for all these years. I've wanted to be relatively free of all that and be, this great funny teacher who all the students find hilarious. I wanted to concentrate on this television show once in a while. And I've also wanted to be very fashionable and clean and fresh feeling and slim. In his autobiography, Carl Jung writes, I have frequently seen people become neurotic when they content themselves with inadequate or wrong answers to life. They seek position, marriage, reputation, outward success, or money, and remain unhappy and neurotic even when they have attained all they were seeking. Carl Jung goes on to say, people are usually confined within too narrow a spiritual horizon. If they are enabled to develop into more spacious personalities, the neurosis generally disappears. We have a responsibility to find our own meaning beyond what society and our families and even ourselves have prescribed for us for such a long time. From in the shadow she calls, and in the shadow she finds a way. She finds a way. And in the shadow she crawls, clutching her faded photograph, my image under her thumb. Yes, with a message from my heart. Yes, with a message from my heart. She's been everybody else's girl. Maybe one day she'll be her own. And in the mist there she rides, and castles are burning in my heart. And as I twist I hold tight, and I ride to work every morning, wondering why. Sit in the chair and be good now, and become all that they've told you. The white coats enter her room, and I'm calling my baby, calling my baby, calling my baby. I'm calling everybody else's girl. Maybe one day you'll be your own. James Hollis states something else that sounds pretty ridiculous, but if you think about it carefully, you may agree with it in some fashion. He says that the first adulthood is between age 12 and age 40. Well, if you think about it, by about age 12, and for many years after, the weight of schooling, parenting, and cultural expectations replaces a child's sense of awe with normative expectations and cultural certainties. For example, working towards getting a job, having a career, and eventually being a spouse or a partner, and perhaps a parent. These warning signs start to occur. These tremors. Don't get married! Don't want stupid babies! They can occur as early as the late, hate my life 20s. But they are easy to overlook. Hollis says, and I quote, life is full. The road ahead beckons. There are rapid shifts, more effort, more energy, and we dismiss the warnings. He's rubbing me the wrong way. And we, stupid job, dismiss the warnings. Hate my boss. I hate these idiots. Changing stinky diapers. Hollis goes on to say that the first adulthood is a provisional existence, lacking the depth and the uniqueness that make that person truly an individual. For example, there's this huge emphasis on romantic relationships in our culture, and the model for intimacy is one of fusion and togetherness. Look how anxious this sign is. We believe that through union with the other, we will be completed. Hollis agrees that this is a natural hope from a person who feels incomplete in the face of the largeness of the world, but claims that this way of thinking serves to impede the development of both people in the relationship. Now, at midlife, one realizes that this fusion model just doesn't work, and that a different model would work better. See, this is a peace sign. So each person needs to take care of his or her psychic well-being. Naturally, they support and encourage one another, but they can't actually take on the tasks of development for the other one, or be that person's individuation process. Your mantra should be, no one can give me what I most deeply want and need. Only I can. If you block your partner or spouse's growth somehow by not allowing him or her to get on with something he feels he or she must do, you pretty much ensure you'll be living with an angry and depressed person. If you don't allow for your own growth because you're scared of what that might do to your partner, neither of you will be happy with the way things manifest. And of course, to be blocked in your own growth by your partner is equally unacceptable. James Hollis calls these spiritual crimes. These crimes are committed left, right, and center in young adulthood relationships, pre-middle age relationships, and sometimes even in older relationships. Once you hit the big 3-5 or 4-0 and beyond, you must ask yourself from time to time, what is it in your history or behavior that might cause conflict or undermine the relationship? Don't just blame the other person. Naturally, it's never all their fault. A question Hollis suggests we ask our spouse to really understand what might excite or trouble them as individuals is, what have your dreams been for yourself, and what fears have blocked you? When we hear our partner's struggles and disappointments, we often develop more compassion and a desire to support their struggle. Sex may connect you, and children definitely give you something very important in common. But the real cement, Hollis says, is to know what it's like to live inside the other's skin. That's what keeps you together. Women and men each find it hard in their own way to do the things they know they need to do to fulfill their calling. A woman finds this hard because she always feels others need her in some way. And so her challenge is to balance the claim of others against her duty to herself. For some women, it may just be their partner. For others, it's their partner and their kids and their friends, or one of the three groups. Hollis advises women to find the courage to risk a new definition for themselves, still valuing relationship but not being limited or defined by it. In a similar way, a man finds it hard to fulfill his destiny because he is often a slave to money, status, and power. Now look at them yo-yos. That's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Now that ain't working. That's the way you do it. Let me tell you, them guys ain't dumb. Maybe get a blister on your little finger. Maybe get a blister on your thumb. But we gotta install microwave ovens, custom kitchen deliveries. We gotta move these refrigerators. We gotta move these color TVs. I should have learned to play the guitar. I should have learned to play them drums. Look at that mama, she's got it sticking in the camera, oh yeah. And he's up there, what's that? Hawaiian noises? He's banging on the bongos like a chimpanzee. That ain't working, that's the way you do it. Your money for nothing and your chicks for free. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. I want my MTV. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Oh yeah. Hollis warns that a man has to ask himself at some point, what do I want? What do I feel? And what do I need to do to feel right within myself? I find this next statement of Hollis's really intriguing too. There is a reactive, not a generative character of the first adulthood. So we're reacting, not creating. Now, I want you to think of yourself as a child right now, not specifically as a parent, because again, this show isn't about guilt. But in our culture, and perhaps in comparison to other tribal cultures or cultures from a long time ago, people now, older people, don't really take younger people aside and teach them how to be big people. Now, this has been going on forever, this lack of initiation. So here we are in our teen years, disappointed when we arrive at that happy transit between childhood and into the world of bigger people without any revelation, because we discover other things like acne and sexual confusion, and there's this growing awareness that our parents really don't know all that much either. They haven't found all the answers because they might actually still be relatively young themselves when we're teenagers, flying by the seat of their pants and just trying to get dinner on the table. So there is a confusion and a dependence on the instructions of adults and institutions which may actually be struggling to get by emotionally and sensibly themselves. Parents. Now you could think of yourself briefly as a parent or a child of a parent, whichever suits you right now. But parents are sometimes disappointed with their children because they don't go to the right college or marry the right person, or maybe they don't hold the right value system. But we see our children as extensions of ourselves and not as different beings with unique paths of their own. If we love being married, for example, we think our kid's going to love being married too. When we see our sons and daughters as really good at something, we envision how that craft is going to take place and make them become. It's our vision though, and it's what we're desiring, and not necessarily something our child is desiring. It's a dream our brain fulfills. Hollis reminds us in the middle passage that our journey, their journey, his journey, her journey, is truly large enough to take us beyond our personal history and others' expectations towards our full potential. And that brings us to our third point in the book, that the soul tries to break through, and often does break through in spite of all the obstacles. And finally, it just can't help but break through all this hogwash by midlife. Hollis says that not to become conscious in the second half of your life is an unforgivable crime. The middle passage cares little for the wishes of your nervous ego that might want to go on being at the top of your game or playing roles or, gossiping about other people, or maybe watching too much crappy TV to avoid your calling. Our soul knows that, And it starts to express itself through symptoms. There's a loss of energy, we feel depressed, we have sudden fits of rage, or overconsumption, shopping, getting stuff. I myself experience all of these things. James Hollis actually says everyone is neurotic because they experience a split between what they are and what they are meant to be. So what work then needs to be done to help us to heal that split that we feel between who we are and who we feel we are somehow destined to be, and at the same time accept our shortcomings? At this point in time, we may be following collective values like the pursuit of wealth or being an overly good and giving person. Now we feel forced to choose between these outer ideologies and our inner neurosis. Well, maybe not. No, you do have an alternative. The path of individuation is the only alternative that makes any sense. We must become ourselves as fully as we can within the limits imposed by our fate. Hollis discusses rather beautifully that, of course, we are always social beings, but we're also spiritual beings with a mysterious end of our own. We can maintain fidelity to outer relationships as well as become more fully that person that our soul is hinting we become. There is a sacrifice the ego has to make, which is very huge and difficult because we have this pressing need for comforts and security. But it's not as big of a sacrifice as looking back on your life and realizing that you've failed to answer this call. And Jesus said, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. In a single engine Cessna, you say we'll never make it there. So all we do is circle it. Uh-oh, let go, off on my way, unseen, this eternal wanting. Uh-oh, way to go, so I get creamed, waiting for Sunday to drown. Uh-oh, way to go, waiting on Sunday to land. So I know it's just a spring haze, but I don't much like the look of it. And all we do is circle it. And I found out where my edge is, and it bleeds into where you resist. Uh-oh, let go, off on my way, unseen, this eternal wanting. Uh-oh, let go, if I really get creamed, waiting on Sunday to drown. Waiting on Sunday to drown.